What's toxic, cheap, and used in pretty much everything? I'll give you a hint. It's not asbestos. Hey, people, welcome. Welcome to part 2 of my giant plastic craft video. If you haven't seen part 1, just click the I in the top right corner or the link in the description. But what exactly do I do in these videos? Basically, I combine several plastic projects I have done in the past and put it into one giant video. It's like a compilation, but for DIYs. And it's for people who haven't seen them yet. But don't worry, I'm not slacking off. I have new projects coming in through the pipeline. So first you're going to need water bottles that have the tops cut off of them. These were already cut off from previous DIYs. I used the tops for either toothpick holders, a tree, or hourglasses. Either way, I recommend checking those videos out because you might have to do something with those water bottle tops later on. Want not, waste not. After that, I got some gesso and covered each of the bottles with it. This is just to make sure that the surface will be easier to paint on. It'll give the plastic a rough texture, which will help you a lot. You have to give the gesso at least 24 hours to completely dry before painting. If you don't have gesso, that's completely understandable. It's expensive, and unless you are someone who paints on canvas, it's unlikely that you would have this on hand. You could instead use sandpaper and rub it on the plastic until it becomes rough enough to paint on. After it's all been said and done, do the same thing with your lids. You can use whatever lids you want. I went with pickle jar lids and a coconut oil one because I thought that they would look good. But you really don't need to do it this way. You can make them fatter, smaller, or whatever. Can't guarantee it'll work out though. Okay, and with the magic of editing, over 24 hours have passed in a second, and we can begin the painting process. I used acrylic paint for this, as usual. You can use spray or chalk paint for this part, but this is just the stuff I had on hand. Acrylic paint at my Walmart cost me only 50 cents for a small 2-ounce bottle, which is not a bad deal. I've been using apple barrel paints for a while now, and they've been pretty good with every project I've done so far. Of course, for stuff like this in the future, it might be better to splurge on some Waverly chalk paint. I see a lot of DIYers use it, so maybe I should try it out. Let me know if you guys have ever used Waverly chalk paint and how it works for you in the comments below. You might have noticed that I'm painting these vases upside down, and that is because it's a lot easier to paint them this way in my humble onion. Now I wait several more hours for the paint to dry, and I have added multiple coats of paint, which takes about an hour or 2 to dry each. And now we can add the Mod Podge. If you didn't know, Mod Podge is a water-based sealer which will keep the paint from peeling off, protect it, and give it a nice sheen. This is the matte version I'm using, and it was made by Plaid, the same folks who own apple barrel paints. You can get these big 16-ounce bottles from Walmart for only $7, I think. They also got a spray version if you don't want to make your hands all goopy and stuff. However, I'm using the liquid version because this will keep the bottle stuck to the lid. I didn't want to use electric tape or hot glue for 2 simple reasons. A, because they wouldn't have looked as good and Mod Podge dries clear, so that wouldn't be a problem. 2, the hot glue would have most likely melted the bottles and paint, which would ruin this particular project. In case you are wondering, no, I'm not sponsored by Plaid, Apple Barrel, or Walmart. I just really like using these things. After that, you put on more Mod Podge and you wait some more. Now here comes the fun part. We get to add some finishing touches to the vases. You can tie some string, twine, yarn, or ribbon around the vase. You can add a little sign or tag of some sort. You can also just let it be. Whatever. But I'm curious to see what you guys did with your vases. Did you follow my examples or something very different? God made you all different, so show me in the comments below how you would do it in your own way. You're going to need 2 plastic water bottles for this project. If you can't find any, check your local body of water. If you want your hourglass to be perfectly symmetrical, I recommend getting 2 bottles that are the same brand. Next, I just cut off the top parts of the bottles like I did for several previous DIYs I did. If you don't know what I mean, just check out my playlist in the description. It'll have a whole bunch of my DIYs on display for you to see. Afterwards, I took some hot glue and glued the bottles vertically. I only added it to the openings because this glue is hot and it will melt the rest of the plastic, so be careful. I then took some material and wrapped it around the point where the bottles intersected. It'll just make it look a little more flattering, that's all. You can use whatever kinds of lids and fabric that you want, or nothing at all. Your lids can be naked. Next, I attached the lid to the bottom of the bottle using electric tape. I would not recommend using hot glue. Learn from my mistake, don't do it. This phase of the project would ideally be when you would add your sand, rocks, and what have you. If you think the sand is flowing too fast, add a little hot glue to the edge of the openings and now slow the flow. I personally don't want to add sand because A, there isn't any around here, and 2, I just don't think it's necessary for this. I'm most likely not going to use it, and it's going to be more decorative than anything, so I won't stress out about it. The final step is to simply attach the other lid to the other side of the hourglass. And that's it. I use plastic bottle lids. You can find them near most bodies of water along with many water bottles because I guess folks can't be bothered to throw away the trash that they bothered to bring, but anyway. At least we can have so many lids at our disposal. You can use as many as you want, but I would go with a minimum of 7 at least. I would also recommend using lids that are from the same brand if you want the coasters to be even. First, arrange the lids the way you want. I'm gonna go with this flower shape because it makes the most sense. So I added some acrylic paint to my coaster, and depending on what you use, you might want to add more coats of paint. Chalk or spray paint would probably be better for this situation than what I used. The footage shows me adding multiple colors, but I do end up going back and painting it over with a single solid color. I just didn't like the way it looked. You'll also want to seal the paint with Mod Podge or something because the whole point of coasters is to keep the moisture off the tables. And if there's too much of it on the coaster, the paint will peel off, so keep that in mind. The very first thing I did was get an empty plastic water bottle and a base. I used a plastic lid that you get with those drinking cups so that my tree will have some stability. You don't need to use this, of course, but whatever you use, make sure it'll keep everything nice and stable because having a firm foundation is important. The second thing I did was take a hot glue gun and hot glue the lid to the bottom of the bottle. Just make sure that the hot glue doesn't go through the lid and stick to the surface you're gluing on. The third thing you'll need is paper. I'm using some of the scrap paper I have on hand because I do a lot of collages, and I think it's good to reuse things when you can. If you want to see me make a collage on an expired license plate, just click the eye in the top right corner. It was a lot of fun to work on. I used apple barrel acrylic paint in black. You can get a big bottle of this for about $10 at Wally World. I went with black because that's the common denominator for most of the furniture in my room. And I like the way it looks. I want to keep my bedroom consistent. And now we can turn all of this stuff into our tree. I cut the black paper into strips and wrapped it around the bottle. It didn't look right, of course, but then the Holy Spirit told me to make some slits along the paper so that I could easily wrap it around the bottle. It worked pretty well, and it made it look more like a Christmas tree. I used electrical tape to stick the paper together because it had the same color and texture. You can use whatever adhesive you want. This is just my personal preference. So I fiddled around with the paper until I was somewhat satisfied with the result. The final step is to, of course, add the decorations. You can go absolutely ham on this part. You can use paint, paper, fabric, ribbon, washi tape, beads, whatever. You can use whatever you want. The best part about this project is that anyone can do this and design their own personal mini tree. I opted to go with some leftover colorful scrap paper I used from previous art pieces because I have so much of it and I see no need to use more paint and paper for something I already had. Red was the first color I added to my tree because it's a really iconic Christmas color. I had a piece of watercolor paper that was painted red and I drew a bunch of circles on it. They were supposed to resemble Christmas ornaments. Next, I cut out every individual circle and hot glued it to my tree. Be extremely careful if you decide to go this route, and take breaks when you need to because this can get real tedious real fast. Next, I got some greenish blue paper. I just cut that up into some rectangles and glued them all over the tree. And I turned some orange paper into some vaguely curved-like things and also glued it on. Hey people, thanks for watching. I hope you guys were able to get something out of this. Let me know what you guys thought. Do you have any ideas? Should I make more big videos like this? Comment down below. Also, if none of these projects suit your fancy, I have some other DIYs on my channel. I have an entire playlist full of different DIYs. You can click the link in the description or the link in the top right corner. You all have a wonderful day and peace out.